Most $50 lenses feel cheap the moment you start using them. This one does the opposite. The Vivitar Series One 70-210 gives you a constant f3.5 aperture, serious telephoto reach, close focus capability, and the kind of mechanical build that would cost far more today. You are watching Alt Buzz Lenses. Subscribe for more affordable and overlooked lenses that are still worth using today. And once you understand what this lens was originally built to compete with, its current price stops making sense. $50 used gives you a 70-210mm zoom with a constant f3.5 aperture through the entire range. It gives you full mechanical construction, a close focus mode that behaves almost like a macro lens, and a body built from real metal. None of that sounds like something built for the bargain bin, and that is exactly the point. This was never supposed to be the cheapest option on the shelf. It became the cheapest option decades later, after the market moved on without it. $50 is not a guarantee, it is a range. Depending on the mount, the seller, and the condition, a usable copy can land anywhere from around $40 to $60. But that range is the story. Somewhere between a filter, a spare battery, and a basic adapter, there is enough room in your budget for an entire constant aperture telephoto zoom. Not a replacement for anything you already own, just a strange amount of glass for the price of an accessory. To understand why that feels wrong, you have to go back to what Vivitar was trying to prove in the 1970s. The Series One line was not built to be an inexpensive alternative to real lenses. It was built to argue that an independent manufacturer could compete on pure engineering alone. The original 70-210 f3.5 was the first major lens to carry that name, and it carried the weight of that argument with it. Behind the optics was a design house called Opcon Associates and an optical engineer named Ellis Batensky, working with computer-assisted optimization at a time when that phrase meant something genuinely rare. Manufacturing was handled in Japan by Kino Precision, a name closely tied to the Chiron brand. American ambition, Japanese production, and a lens built specifically to change how people saw third-party glass. Today, Vivitar is remembered mostly for inexpensive consumer cameras, but this lens came from a completely different chapter of that company's history, one where cheap was never the goal. The aperture holds at f3.5 across the entire zoom range, from 70mm all the way to 210. That means you are not losing light or background separation as you reach toward the telephoto end, the way you would with a typical variable aperture consumer zoom. It sounds like a small detail. In practice, it changes how the lens behaves in your hands. At the longer end, that constant aperture combines with telephoto compression to produce something photographers still chase deliberately. Backgrounds fall away. Subjects separate from their surroundings. This is not a claim that it matches a modern f2.8 professional zoom, because it does not. The honest version is simpler. For a fraction of the price, you get access to a fast, constant aperture telephoto look without paying anything close to modern autofocus zoom money. None of this comes wrapped in plastic either. Pick one up and the weight tells you something before you even look through it. Substantial metal construction, mechanical focusing with real resistance, a traditional zoom action that feels deliberate rather than instant. That physicality is part of the appeal. It is also, as we will get to later, part of the cost. If the constant aperture is the headline, the close focus capability is the twist nobody expects. The original version 1 can reach approximately 1 to 2.2 reproduction at its closest focusing distance. That is not true 1-to-1 macro, and calling it that would be dishonest. But it is far closer to macro territory than a telephoto zoom from this era has any business being. Think about what that unlocks. Flowers, mechanical textures, watch faces, product details. The same piece of glass that compresses a portrait at 210 millimeters can pull in tight on a single detail moments later. That range, telephoto reach paired with genuine close focusing ability, is unusual even by today's standards. The design is tied to an early patented macro-focusing zoom concept, one of the ideas that eventually became normal across the industry. A $50 lens is quietly carrying an idea that shaped how zoom lenses evolved after it. If lenses like this, the ones with a real story buried under a low price tag, are the kind of thing you want more of, this is a good moment to subscribe. AltBuzz Lenses digs into exactly these forgotten corners of camera history every week. Strip away the history, and the question becomes simple. What does this lens actually feel like to shoot with today? The honest answer, built on its established reputation, points to a lens with strong central sharpness, pleasing telephoto rendering, and a softness wide open that feels distinctly vintage rather than clinically corrected. Stop it down and it tightens up considerably. Wide open, it has character, not razor precision. It does not compete with a modern digitally corrected zoom on resolution, and pretending otherwise would undersell what actually makes it worth owning. For portrait work at the longer end, that character becomes an asset. Backgrounds compress naturally. The aperture gives real separation. Manual focusing forces a slower, more deliberate process, one many photographers choose today for exactly that reason. There is no eye-tracking autofocus here. Your keeper rate on moving subjects will be lower, and that trade should not be softened. For video, the same qualities translate into a specific kind of appeal: mechanical focus control and a rendering style no modern lens can replicate. It is not a cinema lens, and no parfocal behavior should be assumed. This lens exists across a range of vintage mounts: Nikon F, Canon FD, Minolta, Pentax, Olympus, M42, Konica, depending on which version you find. On a modern mirrorless body, adapting a lens like that becomes remarkably straightforward, thanks to the short flange distance most mirrorless systems are built around. And once adapted, the camera does something the lens itself never could. Focus peaking highlights sharp edges in real time. Magnified focusing lets you confirm detail before you press the shutter. Some bodies even add stabilization to a lens that was never built with any. The Vivitar did not become easier to focus because the lens changed. The cameras around it did. One honest note, the $50 price covers the lens, not the adapter, and identifying the correct vintage mount before buying one matters. If all of this sounds too good for $50, here is where the story evens out. There is no single deal breaker. It is a combination of smaller ones, stacked together, and together they explain exactly why the price has stayed this low. Manual focus is the biggest one. For wildlife, sports, or anything moving unpredictably, a modern autofocus telephoto will outperform this lens without much of a contest. And it should. Then there is the weight, somewhere around 900 grams. That is heavy for a manual vintage zoom, and it does not travel like a lightweight modern lens, even though it costs like one. Optically, expect the signs of its age: chromatic aberration, flare under harsh light, softer rendering wide open, coatings that were never built to modern standards. The biggest variable, more than any of that, is the individual copy itself. Fungus, haze, internal dust, oil on the aperture blades, stiff focusing, a mechanism that no longer moves the way it should. A clean copy at $50 is genuinely excellent value. A damaged one at the same price is money spent on a paperweight. The lens does not decide which one you get. The seller does. Confirm the version first, specifically the early Series One 70-200 f3.5. Version 1, since Vivitar released several variants under a similar name. A serial number beginning with 22 is commonly associated with Kino precision production. Confirm the mount before buying an adapter. Inspect the glass for fungus, haze, or deep scratches, and check the mechanics, focus movement, zoom action, and the close focus mechanism specifically. And be skeptical of one word: untested. That word means risk, and it should never be priced like a confirmed clean copy. This lens rewards patience in the buying process almost as much as it rewards patience behind the camera. It suits someone with a small budget who enjoys vintage glass, shoots mirrorless, and does not mind manual focus. If your priority is fast autofocus, wildlife tracking, or lightweight travel, a used modern lens will serve you better. $50 buys far more than nostalgia here. It buys a constant aperture telephoto zoom, a close focus capability that still feels unusual, serious mechanical construction, and a design born during one of the most ambitious periods in Vivitar's history. That is the case for buying one. The case against it is just as clear. No autofocus, almost a kilogram of weight, aging coatings, and the quiet uncertainty of trusting 50-year-old optics you have never held. Both things are true at once, and that tension is exactly why this lens still exists at this price. So the real question is not whether the Vivitar 70-210 is good. It is whether those compromises bother you enough to matter. Would you spend $50 on this lens, or put that same money toward a newer autofocus zoom instead? And what is the best vintage lens you have ever picked up for under $100? Tell us in the comments below. For more affordable lenses that still deserve attention on modern cameras, subscribe to AltBuzz Lenses. Some lenses fade. This one just waited for the right camera to catch up.